But the fact is, no one reported finding the body of the real Adolf Hitler.
I'm pretty convinced that 2 people probably did die in the bunker, but they weren't Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun.
He's built a secret colony in the South Pole.
There are many criticisms that you can levy at Tim Pool that have merit, that have some sort of educational background or real purpose. But what the Daily Beast churned out is probably the single dumbest, least educated, most transparent hit pieces I've ever seen. And we know why the Daily Beast writes these things. Let's be very clear. They're trying to deplatform and demonetize Tim Pool because that's why they write these articles. This is one of the easiest to debunk, most ridiculous articles I've ever read. But I think it warrants some looking at because of the very reasons I just stated. This article is full of anonymous take after anonymous take, unresearched, unsupported arguments. It is a blatant, just smear piece. It's probably the worst I've ever read. And again, the reason this exists, I can't be clear enough, is to demonetize and deplatform Tim Pool. That's why this article was written. They don't like Tim Pool. The fact of the matter is, from Jump Street, okay, from the article's title, you know that they don't know anything about Tim Pool. How coward and phony Tim Pool became one of the biggest political YouTubers on the planet. They continue to call, you can see Becca Lewis here. I talked to Bob, I don't care, for his truly astonishing investigation into far-right YouTuber Tim Pool. Settle in for this one. It's long, painstakingly referenced, no it isn't, and the definitive piece in one of YouTube's most influential far-right creators. Now, they mentioned far-right twice. What's the number one thing people complain about Tim about? What do people call Tim? A fence sitter. That's the number one thing that is said about Tim Pool. That he's a fence sitter. Does that sound like he's a far righty? Of course not. But these articles aren't written with any actual intention on being factually correct. A former darling of Occupy Wall Street, Tim Pool has racked up more than 1 billion views and millions in earnings while dangerously whitewashing the far right. Stop Asian hate, Daily Beast. You know, Tim Pool is Asian. Why are you participating in that? In the targeted harassment of an Asian man, the Daily Beast. Of all the ideological enemies Pool 35 rails against on YouTube for the audience of millions a day, few stack up to the mainstream press. Shocking why you might be writing this. In his mind, coverage of then President Donald Trump instigations and the mounting issues were yet another example of media's depravity. It is. What do you think they're going to do? Asked Pool. It's so stupid. 2 days later, a mob stormed the Capitol, whipped into a frenzy by nonsensical claims by Donald Trump. Look, I don't care, where you stand on the Capitol. Let me just point this out. For an entire summer, the media praised fiery but mostly peaceful protests from people who were doing far worse. But when people who have a political opinion that is one that they don't like, suddenly it's an insurrection. You're talking about people that queued up in line for the most part and took an unauthorized tour of the Capitol. Yes, there were some idiots that went way too far, and it's a tragedy. It really is. But I'm not about to compare it to anything that the mainstream media is going to comparing it to. Some of the things they've said are outright disrespectful and heinous. I'm not calling it an insurrection either, because it wasn't. It was a mob that got out of control, just like it had happened more than 24 times over the previous summer when mainstream media was tripping all over themselves to endorse it. Okay? Bad behavior on both sides, but one was an attack on democracy, and the other was suppressed voices speaking out. While Poole kept his secret from his younger, overwhelmingly male, decidedly right-leaning, they don't know that, audience, during this time, they seemed to have a pretty good idea. He seemed to have a pretty good idea of what might happen on that day. Dude, I've had messages from people saying they've already got plans to rush DC, and as soon as November 3 goes chaotic, Poole said in early September. A few minutes later, he added the right-wing oath keepers, the 3%ers, and those Proud Boys and Trump supporters are all going to rush full speed to D.C. This is a glaring omission, but was not out of character for Tim Poole. Far from it. A former digital media journalist who built up his name with on-the-ground reporting and live streaming, including stints at Vice and Fusion, Poole now postures as a rational centrist or a, quote, disaffected liberal who grew to loathe the excesses of the left. If you buy Poole's branding, he stands in contrast to the bulk of his journalistic peers as evil liars, he says, who supposedly capitulated to the agendas of BLM, Democrats, big tech companies, feminists, and the like. What do you mean? They did. Like, what do you mean? The self-generated mythology of an anti-authority truth teller whose success stemmed from confronting, quote, the machine, as Poole puts it, bears little resemblance to reality. Contrary to the overall manner in which Poole portrays himself, he was not an intrepid field reporter and streamer who barreled into conflict zones filled with unshakable desire to ferret out the real story. Poole was at times reluctant to even leave the safety of his hotel room, according to several of the nearly 30 former co-workers and acquaintances from the past decade who spoke with the Daily Beast, all of which are unaccredited and anonymous, by the way. You know, and people... It sounds like a lot of people, you know, I hate to just dismiss everything as jealousy, but that's how a lot of this reads, to be honest with you. A coward and a phony, a big fat phony, staggeringly arrogant. Well, Tim is pretty arrogant. Totally full of S, not smart, and a bumbling doofus. Are representative samples of how those who worked with Poole and digital media companies described him, none of which are attached to any names anywhere. I mean, I understand the importance of anonymity, and it's an important tool to reporting the truth. But when you're just slandering somebody, like, put your name behind it, okay? Like, I, Jeremy of the Quartering, agree that Tim Poole is arrogant, okay? But the dude's earned what he's got, and so he has a certain right to be. He's arrogant in the same way that, like, a football player or a basketball player is arrogant about their game. He's at the top of the political commentary space game, or one of the top 3 or 4 out there. So he has a right to be confident. But, you know, put your name behind it if all you're going to do is say high school insults. He was bringing nothing to the table. It felt like we were worse than being conned. A former Vice producer. Okay, what? And it has made Poole both exceedingly rich and one of the most watched independent YouTube political pundits in the country. Over 3.3 million subscribers, 1.5 billion views, and by all estimates, hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue per month. He earned $600,000 in August 2020, and most of it came from YouTube, Poole claimed in an audio recorded conversation. Okay, where is the link to that? Unlike his peers in conservative media, Poole wasn't boosted by the usual suspects or anybody like that. Now the right-wing and far-right figures, many of whom might not have welcomed on the platform to the left, Tucker Carlson tonight, not only have taken notice, they come to him. Like, business is booming per Poole, with dozens of employees on payroll since April, a prominence made possible in no small part by YouTube promoting his work to its front page. Again, this is a slippery salamander snake way of trying to get him deplatformed. Of course, that's what this is. The YouTube algorithm drives the majority of my content. At other times, he'll complain that YouTube is suppressing his content. YouTube picks and chooses which content gets views and which creators become famous, he told a Twitter follower. That's true. Apparently, they've chosen Pool. I don't even think he's that big. I mean, let's be honest. Like, the idea that, like, the guy, he has 1 million subscribers, okay? If you want to combine all 3 of his channels, which probably has an 80% plus crossover, even then, and you said 3 million, that's really not that popular. There are like vlog channels with 30 million subscribers. PewDiePie's 100+ million subscribers. Nursery rhyme channels have hundreds of millions of subscribers and billions of views a day. But it's in the Daily Beast's best interest to kind of overhype who Pool is. And look, they cite a Tim Pool hate Twitter feed. I mean, that's like, you know, who survives on clipping Pool, sometimes out of context, and you know, to paint him in the worst possible light. Look, again, there's no reason, there's absolutely significant reasons, reasonable reasons to criticize Tim Pool, but this is just a joke. This whole article is a joke. And if you see here, you know, and again, if you call him far right, like he's for legalizing it, he supports social programs, he is not far right. You see this article, the worst journalism of 2021 so far. And it's not every day you wake up to a work of art so spectacularly terrible it requires immediate response. In propagandist fashion, left-wing Daily Beast blogger Robert Silverman has just released a smear piece on centrist liberal commentator Tim Pool. I referred to his article, How Coward and Phony Tim Pool, because one of the biggest political YouTubers on the planet, as a work of art rather than the form of journalism, because it reads more like a deranged Tumblr rant than it was worked on, and it was worked on for over a month in an honest investigative piece as one. TLDR, just because you have tons of sources doesn't mean they're good sources, and that you should probably check your facts and framing when dealing with political smear pieces. It begins by claiming Tim Pool has, by the way, this is via liberal.news. The article begins by claiming Pool had known that the January 6th event was going to happen because of, you know, and that, so the article begins with a flat out lie. The man is known for fence sitter who gets predictions wrong a decent amount of the time, so attacking his predictions to begin an article immediately takes out journalism into the Tumblr rant territory. The article then has a link to Tim Pool's supposed right-leaning audience that actually features Pool describing his audience as primary libertarian. The article uses Pool's occasional defense of the Proud Boys as an attack, but leaves out that any and all context, including the context they have asked Pool for their footnotes in the article itself. Pool says of the Proud Boys, you know, as a response. Despite the article then claiming Pool didn't go into conflict zones with the desire to get real story, and well, he did. The article attempts to portray Pool as staying in the hotel out of fear, which couldn't be further from the truth. He's covered protests in Thailand, Venezuela, Egypt, Turkey, Brazil, and Spain, and Ukraine, and others. Robert Silverman doesn't even cite anything for such a ridiculous claim that comes from, quote, former coworkers and other acquaintances, just expecting us to believe his nonsense without checking the facts in order to add to the personal smear on Pool. The article then gets its name from one of the insults hurled at Pool from a former coworker. Anybody who has coworkers has likely a coworker who hated them for personal or political reasons. So what? Pool, as comedically noted by frequent guest Jack Murphy, is routinely called worse things on his own show than the Daily Beast could ever muster from former acquaintances. Right after this, the article claims Pool has discovered a style of commentary that requires no journalistic skills. The claim that curiously serves as a valuable attribute on projection munch. This claim is so laughable as any quick pursuit of Pool's 3 channels reveal a wide variety and array of sources and guests that range from across the political spectrum. Pool nearly exclusively uses NewsGuard certified sources, unlike the Daily Beast or Robert Silverman. It also falsely claims that he has 3.3 million subscribers when in fact Pool has 4 different channels, none of which have over 1.5. Doubling up doesn't count as more subscribers. It also claims that he earns $600K a month, a claim in which the article's own footnote again disproves. The author, Robert Silverman, is not a journalist and published uncited information without comment that Silverman asked for and received from Pool himself. The Daily Beast, are you serious? You seriously pay this man? I mean, they hid a lot of Tim Pool's replies to things in footnotes and buried them underneath links. This is a direct attack on Tim Pool by leftist media. It's absolutely disgusting, and I stand in support with him. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll talk to you again real soon.